Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today we're going to talk about computers and our devices and something called skeuomorphism. And I must admit, before we, started researching our program for today, I had never heard of this term before, but I am familiar with the concept, kind of using images and things of past inventions, and we use them with our current devices so we know what the functions of the apps are.
Yeah, and they also, I was looking this up too last night. I thought it was interesting. I didn't know what this word was. I'd never seen it before. But it is a word that's used in design, in the design world a lot, or the digital world.
Yeah, basically, it's just a little icon on your phone's screen. For example, it looks like a camera, but it actually isn't a camera. It's just a picture of a traditional camera that we used to use many years ago that used film, and you had to get it processed, and you had prints and stuff like that. So, yeah, we use these images not just with the apps on our phones, but with everyday objects as well. That's kind of what that means. We use these old images so that people, I guess, can be comfortable with the new technology. So let's get to it. Let's read through the entire contents of our lesson right now. When Steve Jobs ran Apple, he insisted that digital design elements imitate real-world objects. Jobs said this would make computer functions recognizable to just about anyone, so that even a novice could easily understand their purpose. This way of thinking translated into app icons like YouTube's original television set, Instagram's instant camera, or a realistic microphone for a voice recorder. This mode of design is called skeuomorphism, and evidence of it is everywhere even today. If you examine your computer screen thoroughly, you will find numerous examples of skeuomorphism right in front of you. The recycle bin resembles a trash can that's either empty or full of papers, while the Save button looks like a floppy disk, an old form of external file storage that preceded CDs and USB drives. Your phone's calling feature is also skeuomorphic. It resembles a conventional telephone handset from a landline phone, even though smartphones have never looked this way. Even the phrase, "hang up the phone," recalls a function that can really only be experienced at a public phone these days, hanging the phone receiver on its hook to end a call. Phone or tablet keyboards are also sometimes skeuomorphic in a sense. If you use a QWERTY keyboard for your computer, you might see small raised bars on the F and J keys to specify where to rest your index fingers. Apple's iPad keyboard used to have this feature, only in touchscreen form. Skeuomorphic features like these have diminished as people have become more digitally literate, but they still crop up in certain instances of new technology that need to be quickly understood by users.
Okay, guys, let's take a look. Again, this word, you're not going to find it in a regular dictionary. We're going to pronounce this word skeuomorphism. Skeuomorphism. So the zhongyin is on the morph. Skeuomorphism. Okay, here we go. When art imitates life. Yeah, a lot of these things we're talking about today have to do with the design of things, whether it's design in the technical world or as I was talking to Tom before we started, sometimes you'll see it in things like lamps. My mother has a chandelier in our home, and instead of having just like round light bulbs or regular light bulbs, the light bulbs that fit the chandelier are all shaped as if they were candles or flames on a candle. So it kind of looks old-fashioned. That's just an example of skeuomorphism.
So, yes, that's an example of when art imitates life. When you get those, chandeliers, those light sets, or those apps on your phone, the icons there, they sort of represent something real that existed in the past, but it doesn't really apply to the present. It just helps you understand the function of that particular thing. So, when Steve Jobs ran Apple, or when Steve Jobs was the boss of Apple, he insisted that digital design elements imitate real-world objects. This is, I guess, where this all came from. Steve Jobs wanted these digital design elements to actually look like real-world things. Hence, if you want to make a phone call on your phone, you push a little icon that looks like an old telephone.
Yeah, I wanted to point out they're using this adjective real-world. You know, when Tom and I were growing up, you didn't often see these two words put together and used as an adjective. That's because so much of our world today is virtual. It's not real. Maybe we're seeing something online or we're seeing something acted out that's not real. So real world instead of virtual. That's the opposite of that. So Steve Jobs, said that making the things that they were designing look like real-world things would help people recognize what they were and how to use them. I remember when the iPhone first came out, I was on a plane sitting next to a guy who worked for Apple, and he was showing me the pictures of his family, and he was swiping the screen, and I thought, what in the world does he have? So that was my first exposure or experience with an iPhone, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. So sometimes people aren't used to new technology, especially older folks, and maybe you want to give them a clue or a key as to what they're actually looking at by making it look like the real-world object or something that used to exist in the past. Notice here they're using this word novice. So they're making these functions recognizable to just about anyone so that even a novice could easily understand their purpose. If you call someone a novice, it just means they're brand new at something. Maybe you're just starting to learn how to make pottery. I'm watching a pottery television show from England right now, and I think, wow, I'm a real novice. I don't understand any of these words they're throwing around, like they throw down on the potter's wheel. So if you're a novice, just know that it means you're a beginner. You're a beginner, you're brand new at something.
Right, so that was the idea, and indeed Apple came out with computer products, and a lot of people had never really used computers before, so he wanted to make it user-friendly so that people could understand the functions of these things, and he wanted to make sure that beginners or even a novice could understand the purpose of those programs, and this way of thinking translated into app icons like YouTube's original television set, Instagram's instant camera, or a realistic microphone for a voice recorder. So these are some examples here. This is this way of thinking here. You want novice people to understand. You want beginners to understand the function of certain applications. So yes, this way of thinking translated into these icons. Translate in this particular case does not refer to saying one language in another, but it means that you just sort of took that way of thinking and then you showed it or you demonstrated that type of thinking with something that you could actually see. So the result was we have these app icons on the surface of your iPhone or your Android device, whatever you use. And of course, when YouTube came out, it originally had a television set that's changed since then. And then when Instagram came out, of course, it looked like an instant camera, the old cameras that would take a picture and then it would shoot the picture out. And after maybe 2 or 3 minutes, you'd get a picture.
We called them Polaroids.
Yeah, Polaroid, Instamatic cameras sometimes. Or no, that was actually the early shaguaji. I don't know how to say that in English. Point and shoot cameras, basically. But yeah, this was a picture of the old instant camera. Again, that has changed as well. And then, of course, if you have a voice recorder on your phone, which can be useful if you're recording lectures in your college classes, or if you're trying to record some memos to yourself or record conversations you're having with people, then you have that app on your phone. But then the icon will be a microphone, a realistic microphone. If it's realistic, it looks like it's real, even though your phone is not going to be using that old radio microphone.
Right. My current camera or my current phone doesn't have a microphone that looks like a microphone, but my first camera does, or my first iPhone does. It's not an iPhone. Why am I saying iPhone? My smartphone, I actually buy Samsung. That's what I have. Anyway, if it's realistic, yeah, it represents something familiar in a way that is very accurate, true to life. It looks like you could touch it. Have you seen those paintings with a bowl and there's fruit inside the bowl? Sometimes they look very realistic, and it looks like actual fruit in front of you. If it were 3D, you'd really think you could pick it up and eat it. So moving on to the second paragraph, it says, if you examine your computer screen thoroughly, you will find numerous examples of skeuomorphism right in front of you. Yeah, I haven't really paid attention to these icons lately on my phone or on my computer. I'm usually too busy working to pay attention. The other day I was looking for the trash can. I thought, where's the garbage bin or the trash bin? And I didn't realize it was still on my desktop. I thought they'd moved it somewhere. Sometimes they keep moving things and I have to go looking for them. Well, if you look at something thoroughly or you do something thoroughly, that's a weird word, thoroughly. It just means you do something really completely. And you pay attention to every detail. So you might have a friend, I have a friend who writes papers and she's very haphazard, meaning she's very sloppy with the way she writes.
Very careless?
No, careless. Haphazard is probably too advanced, but yeah, careless. And she always will ask me after she finishes to read her paper thoroughly for any problems or mistakes. She writes fast, and so sometimes she forgets to even type words that are in her mind, but she doesn't type them out. So if you do something thoroughly, especially if your boss or your parents say that you've done something thoroughly, they're giving you a compliment. They're saying you paid a lot of attention and you did a very detailed, careful job with whatever you're doing or whatever you were assigned to do.
Yep, thoroughly is the adverb. Thorough is the adjective. You want to do a thorough job on your research for your, paper, your final paper for your college class or something. You need to do it thoroughly. And yes, indeed, if you look at your computer screen thoroughly, if you take a careful look at it, you'll find lots of examples of skeuomorphism right in front of you. And that brings us to the midway point in our lesson for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们今天要带大家看一个在设计方面的一个主题，就叫做拟真设计，就是模拟我们生活的状况，然后把这个样的设计呢放在产品的设计当中。这个专业词出现在标题，这字有点长，我们来看一下 skeuomorphism。好，专业词 skeuomorphism 拟真设计。拟真设计我们大概最熟悉的就像是比如说之前这个 Steve Jobs 他在经营苹果电脑的时候，其实他蛮坚持所谓的数位设计的元素都一定要仿照现实世界的物体，这种概念其实就叫做 skeuomorphism。 好，所以呢也就是说数位的设计的东西都仿照现实世界的东西，这样有什么好处呢？任何人其实就可以马上可以知道这个电脑软体的功能是什么，即使是新手 novice 也可以理解用途。同样在第二句的地方，我们看一下逗点之后 so that 这里可以把它框起来。这个连接词很好用哦，它可以表示一个目的。这样一来，如此一来的话，即便是新手就可以轻松了解电脑某一些软体它的功能如何。那么这种思维呢，当然我们现在看所有的 app icon 那些程式的图示，比如说 YouTube 啊，就用一个电视机造型啊 IG 啊，就用拍立得相机啦，或你开录音程式的时候，好像感觉有个真的麦克风一样。这种设计就是我们刚刚说的 skeuomorphism。那如果你真的看一下电脑萤幕或者是手机萤幕的话，你可以看到真的有很多的设计的例子。不过在第二段的第一句啊，注意一下这个副詞 thoroughly。如果你仔细的检查一下你的萤幕，仔细的查看一下 thoroughly。如果我们把 ly 摘掉的话 thorough 注意发音 thorough 是个形容词，它指的是很完整的意思。那么跟它长得很像的另外有两个字，一个叫做 through through through， 它是介系词，就是透过什么什么方式的意思 through。 另外一个还跟它长得很像，就是 though though， 那个是连接词，也就是虽然。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're talking about skeuomorphism, when art imitates life. So we started this particular program talking about Steve Jobs and how he ran Apple Computer. That was his company. And he always insisted that digital design elements like icons on a computer, desktop, or even on the iPhone later on really did imitate or look like real-world objects. So if it was a file for a folder for files, it actually looked like a file folder that we would actually use in an office in real life. So he liked this. He thought it helped people connect the real-world items with these digital icons that they were coming up with in a design kind of way. So they would translate this way of thinking into their app icons. And Tom also talked about, and our article does too, about YouTube when it first was, I guess, available online. They were using as their icon an original television set or TV set. I don't remember that, but it kind of sounds familiar. Instagram had the instant camera. That's what their app icon looked like. It's changed since then. And if you had a microphone on your smartphone, for example, you might have it represented by a realistic or real-looking microphone. But these are just examples of design that is using this concept called skeuomorphism.
Right, so we left off at the beginning of our program there, at least at the midway point, by telling you to take a thorough look at your computer screen or the screen of your device and look for some examples of skeuomorphism. So we've got one here. The recycle bin resembles a trash can that's either empty or full of papers. Indeed, it does look like a trash can, and that's kind of what you're doing when you throw things away. You put them in the garbage can, the trash bin, as some people say. And also, we've got the example of the save button. It looks like a floppy disk, an old form of external file storage that preceded CDs and USB drives. Some of you out there may be too young to remember the old floppy disks. I remember them. They were kind of inconvenient because they could only store 1.44 megabytes of information. That's just peanuts. That's just nothing compared to the external hard drives we have nowadays, but that's what we had to use back then. And we still have that picture, and if you want to save something, you click on that little picture of a floppy disk, And yes, indeed, nowadays, of course, we've got external file storage. Storage just refers to where you put stuff or the process of saving things. External storage, most of us use the cloud, I guess, or some people use external hard drives, which are probably safer. It's probably not a good idea to put stuff on the internet too much, or at least have different places to put stuff. And, of course, this floppy disk preceded CDs and USB drives and flash keys and all that fun stuff. So to precede something just means to be before something.
Yeah. Now, Tom was talking about the definition of storage as a noun. If you're going to use it as a verb, you're going to store something somewhere. But sometimes people will say, hey, do you have any storage available left in your apartment? I don't. Sometimes friends will need you to store something for a brief period of time. Maybe they're moving and they just need a little storage space for a bit. But you store things on either a computer hard drive. You can store things in, I had storage that I rented in New York City for almost 10 years before I hired trucks to take it out to my parents' house in Arizona. So, yeah, there are lots of places to store things. And if you precede somebody else, it means you came before them. So, let me think. The person who preceded me at this particular company, I think her name was Stephanie, too. I think. Well, she worked here a little bit, but yeah. Precede, and if you follow someone, you are the person who comes afterwards, of course. So your phone's calling feature is also skeuomorphic. This is the adjective form of that particular noun. It resembles or looks like a conventional telephone handset. From a landline phone, these are the old-fashioned phones that are plugged into your wall. Even those smartphones have never looked this way. It's true. Even the phrase, hang up the phone, 关掉, hang up the phone, it really doesn't apply to our phones nowadays. Nowadays we just press the button, right, to stop or just quit the phone call. But it recalls a function that really only was experienced in the olden days. Or if you happen to see a public phone these days, you might be able to really hang up the phone receiver on its hook to end the call. Now, moving on to the final paragraph, Tom, it's your turn. Here we go.
Okay, I will start the third and final paragraph. It says, phone or tablet keyboards are also sometimes skeuomorphic in a sense. Okay, so again, we've got keyboards on our phones and on our tablets. You push them by tapping them with your fingertips, but they are skeuomorphic in a way or in a sense. So, for example, if you use a QWERTY keyboard for your computer, you might see small raised bars on the F and J keys to specify where to rest your index fingers. So most of us, I think all of us, still use a PC at home or a Mac or whatever, which has a keyboard. Most of us type faster with an actual keyboard than on the keyboard of our devices, although that may not be true anymore. But again, if you want to find your location on the home row on a QWERTY keyboard, then you need to look for those little bumps, and that's where the F and J keys will be, and then you can put your hands in the right position, and you don't need to look at the keyboard.
Yeah, and if you specify something, guys, it just means you tell someone or you identify clearly what should happen. So they clearly tell you where to rest your index fingers. These are for the old people who used to type on a computer, I think, too. So Apple's iPad keyboard used to have this feature, only in touchscreen form, which is kind of strange to even think about. You'll have to check out your old iPads, guys. Skeuomorphic features like these have diminished as people have become more digitally literate. If you're digitally literate, it means you understand the computer. You're not afraid of it. You can teach yourself things. And if things diminish, it just means that whatever you're talking about, that size or that quantity reduces over time. So it becomes smaller and smaller. So yeah, you don't see it quite so much anymore because people are becoming familiar, very, very comfortable at least, with computers and smartphones. But they still crop up in certain instances. If something crops up, you'll see it every once in a while, but it's not always there.
Right, so you never know when these new abilities or new programs are going to pop up or crop up. They're going to appear, and so we might need some icons for that represent old technology, so we have an idea of what their function is. Maybe eventually we won't need this kind of functionality, and skeuomorphic things may disappear, but I have a feeling they're going to be around for quite some time. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Let's listen to our Chinese teacher.
接下来我们看一下很多拟真设计的实例啊，比如说资源回收桶，看起来好像就像是垃圾桶一样，不是空的，要不然就装满了纸。但是储存键呢，看起来就是一个像软式的磁碟片。软式磁碟片呢，就是在光碟跟 USB 随身碟之前的一种所谓的 floppy disk。好，我们来看一下这一段第二句的地方哦，句子有点长。句子长的原因呢，是因为基本上它有一个连接词，在逗点之后有一个 while。然而如何如何，我们刚刚讲了两个例子，一个是资源回收桶，另外一个呢则是储存这样子的一个 icon。资源回收桶这里带了一个限定用法的关系子句，先行词是 a trash can， 关系子句从 that 一直到逗点这个地方。那么 while 之后也有一个关系子句，先行词就是我们刚刚讲的软碟 a floppy disk， 逗点之后是同位语，整个还是一起划线 an old form of external file storage， 关系子句从 that 一直到句尾的地方，中间这个动词的 precede 指的是走在前面，在什么什么之前。好，还有一些像通话功能啦，甚至连挂断电话 hang up the phone 这种说法，其实也会让我们想起只有在公共电话才能真的挂上电话。好，我们看同样这一段第四句的地方也出现了一个限定用法的关系子句，先行词是 a function 一种功能，关系子句很长哦，从后面的 that 一直到句尾的地方。好，那当然在某种程度上啊，甚至连键盘都是拟真的，因为我们的键盘基本上它的排列就是一个QWERTY 键盘。那么 QWERTY 键盘呢，我们会在食指的地方呢 F 跟 J 这个地方其实本来都会有突突的那个小横杆，用来是明确指出那个食指到底要放在哪里。我们特别看一下这一句哦，在最后一段第三段第二句的地方，动词的 specify 后面 where 到句尾的地方，在这里不是关系子句哦，而是当成受词 specify 的受词，所以 where 到句尾可以用中括号把它括起来，它是个名词子句，当 specify 的受词。不过呢，现在这种拟真的设计啊，其实慢慢比较少了，慢慢的减少，因为现在大家都比较能够理解一些科技当中的设计，所以现在的拟真状况是比较少。我们同样在第三段最后一句第四句的地方特别注意一下这里的 as 如果当连接词的时候大概就几个意思，不是 when 就是 because， 要不然就是如同好像，完全要根据句子的上下文去判断。在这里的 as 后面表示的是原因，而这个原因当中呢，又带了一个限定用法的关系子句，在句子最后面的地方，先行词是 certain instances of new technology， 而关系子句限定用法从后面的 that 一直到句尾的地方。以上是我们今天的内容，我是安娜，我们明天见哦。
We're going to keep on talking about skeuomorphism in our next program, and it's an exciting topic that I'm sure all of you are looking forward to hearing us discuss. So please join us again next time for another edition of our program. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.